Hello and welcome back to another open source workplace video. I'm very glad to welcome back Andrew Mawson. Andrew Mawson is the
Hi.
owner of Advanced Workplace Associates. Andrew, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Steve. I'm doing well. The world is changing very quickly around us, isn't it? And
It certainly
posing
is.
posing some fascinating questions for people who are in the heart of this industry at the moment. So yeah, no, it's an interesting week.
And fascinating questions. What questions sort of front of your mind?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of leaders are now popping out the woodwork and suddenly realizing that there is an alternative to having, large offices in the center of cities, and they are prodding their real estate directors to say, "Hey, come on, what's going on?" And we've got several clients and prospective clients who are wanting to use this moment to take a good look at their workplace strategy and really create something which describes the sort of end state that they want to get into post COVID, and the end state is not big offices and centre of towns. I think people have understood that the home working side of things can be a significant part of workplace strategy. So I think all the balls are up in the air, and very often companies are looking to people like us who are independent. We don't have a connection with the property industry really, and we've been in this and have been operating these sorts of models for a long time, to kind of take an independent view and help them to work out how to make that shift, but also to stabilize what they're doing at the moment, because I think organizations are still in a bit of a honeymoon period with this home working thing. And what is clear from the research is that over time a lot of things can drift off if you don't put in place a variety of new interventions. And we've been working on putting together a suite of new services which we're calling Work in a Way, which are all designed to help to support leaders and the and the people managing the infrastructure, so that they do all the right things that they need to be doing, the new practices and processes they need to put in place to make sure they don't lose out on all the things that they were going to lose when they were in the office. So yeah, a fascinating
Mm.
time. Yeah.
It is, and the questions coming from as a cost reduction exercise, a productivity
Yeah.
exercise, or something else?
Well, I think it's really interesting you say that, because it's a mixture of things, actually. I mean, one organisation we're talking to at the moment in the UK, professional services business, have been trying to move to this kind of more agile model for probably 4 or 5 years. And although they've had all the evidence and the arguments and everything else, they've simply not been able to move the dial. Partnership organisation, always difficult to shift, move partnership organisations, because every partner has an owner really, and they all have a vote. But so they've come to us and said, look, we want to look at this time as an opportunity really, but the drivers are leases expiring, wanting to make themselves more attractive to a younger workforce, and also a more diverse workforce, particularly in the legal sector. It's very much a female, a lot of female lawyers, and of course, if you're not flexible, you lose them when they start having children and all the rest of it. So, number of drivers: modernization, reduction in space, greater agility, more flexibility, more attractive for employees. And it's really, I think pretty well on all the projects we deal with, we see the confluence of those. It's just, the question is really, what's the trigger? And often the trigger is actually a financial one linked to leases, and that's the trigger that sort of lights the bonfire really.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, and I guess there's a lot of these different triggers at the moment that and gives everybody the opportunity to evaluate what's going on. So obviously we're 6, 7 weeks into lockdown.
Mm,
If there was one thing that you thought you wish you knew before we went
mm.
into lockdown, what would that be?
Well, I was one of the people who got it early on, and I would have liked to have known how dreadful it was going to be before I actually got it, because I keep hearing these people who were very lucky and managed to get 3 days of a bit of a sniffle and then they're back in business. For me, it was like nearly a 3 week period of I've still got it a little bit, the coughing, just feeling exhausted, aching, shivering, sweating, and progressively having your breathing getting a little bit worse. I was lucky; mine didn't get so bad that I needed any medical help. But it was a kind of an unknown. I didn't know I didn't even know where we were on our journey with it, and I didn't know how close to any real risk I was along the way. And in fact, I was, I think around about day 14, a friend of mine who I'd been conversing with on WhatsApp called me and said, how are you doing? And I told him the symptoms and everything. And he said, well, and he told me a story about a guy that he knew who, like us, hadn't bothered the NHS and hadn't dialed the 111 service and everything, and had just tried to, battle it out. And he called too late, and the paramedics arrived, and he simply couldn't breathe. His lungs just kind of gave up. So that triggered me into a very sharp conversation with 111, and not necessarily about me, but my wife was struggling a little bit more. And fortunately, then they engaged, and we got her into hospital for tests and all that kind of stuff. And fortunately, she didn't need to stay in. She came out, but they kept in touch, and it comforted me to know that we'd at least had that kind of interaction. But the problem, I think, was certainly in the early stages is nobody really knew what they were in for, and so yeah, I think that was the one thing I would have liked to have known.
Yeah, no, I'm
um,
sure, I'm sure. And obviously, it's been a catalyst for a whole bunch of new work
mm,
in for for advanced workplace associates. And as you look at that, what specific body of work really excites you? And obviously
mm.
understanding that there is change coming, is there something that inside you looks at here's a real opportunity for the
Well,
industry?
I've always, I've always felt that um, the world that we're sort of heading towards is the world that we probably should have, because I mean, there's an awful lot of things that are wrong with the traditional old way of working. I mean, wasting time, commuting, emissions, cost, inflexibility. I mean, it's fraught with it really. And I've always kind of looked at, try to look through the eyes of a chief executive and say, what value does this all add? And I think we're at that point now. Chief execs are genuinely, I think, particularly the thoughtful ones, are saying, actually, why do we need offices, or why do we need the offices we've got? I mean, what is the purpose? What is the real reason? What is the purpose of having these things? And it's really interesting, because I think there are plenty of good reasons why you might want to invest in a physical location, particularly a central one. But I think what's happening now is we're being encouraged to take a very zero-based approach to this, starting at the other end of the telescope to the end we used to start at, which is, if we can all work at home, the trick is then to say, well, okay, tell me why that it's not possible to run the business in that mode on its own. So you start looking at things like, what is the purpose? What are the real reasons why I need to get people together in a central location? Is it for innovation? Is it for rapidity of activity to solve a problem? Is it to do with creating some form of magnet to bring people to you? Is it simply to provide a place for people to work who can't work at home, or don't have the personality to do it? So it's really interesting to start from that end of the telescope, because you then start to have to kind of come up with a zero-based property strategy, if you like. And then, but of course, at the same time, you do need to upskill the organization so that it's capable of operating in a much more agile model. And I think at the moment, you know, a lot of people are kind of still in the sort of honeymoon period where it's all there's still a bit of a novelty. And you know, the essence of this is that over time we know that certain things will drift off. But you know, the research is very clear about what you need to do in order to make sure that doesn't happen. And so, you know, what we've been doing is bringing together a lot of the things we've done over the last few years into a new package, which we're calling the Working Away package, which is designed, you know, mixture of infrastructure things and leadership workshops and, you know, package really to help to upskill organizations to work like this. And it's intriguing because we're kind of suggesting to some clients that they start that now, almost as part of a change program, but before we even know what the end state looks like, because you can position it as being something to help people right now. So it's really, you know, the changes we're seeing have forced us to rethink and redefine the way we attack some of these projects, because the truth is that, you know, the changes have been made. You know, we've had 6 weeks of a rapid anger-driven change program, and it's, you know, people are now beginning to develop new patterns of thinking, new habits, new skills and stuff, and they're beginning to, you know, get grooved into a new way of working. So the essence of it is how do you then consolidate and give them better skills and capabilities to keep that going, whilst at the same time taking a much more rational view about what you really need, recognizing that you 9 times out of 10 you're going to need something. The question is, what is it? What is it going to do? What's it going to look like? What is it going to feel like? It certainly doesn't feel like you know, what I would call a traditional office. But yeah, this is the, you know, and I mean, I get paid for this as well. I mean, it's great, it's fantastic fun, but driven by something that's pretty awful. But you know, that's our world, really.
No, that's great thoughts, and obviously we'll provide links to your work that you referenced there, and then other folks who want to can go check the links below and
Yeah.
connect with you and your organization. So,
Mm.
Andrew, look, thank you. I appreciate you giving us your time this week yet again, and
Pleasure.
I look forward to catching up soon. Learn a lot from
Yeah.
you, so thank you.
No, pleasure.